Welcome to Finding Inspiration, everybody. Hope you enjoy this episode. Got a lot of really interesting pieces of art here to talk about. And please give these artists your thoughts and opinions. They certainly will appreciate it, and I appreciate anything that you want to know about myself and about the episode. So enjoy these pieces of art that I'll be talking about. This is a untitled piece by Seren Findik. It's a fairly, what I would sort of call basic surrealism. It sort of lacks, it almost seems like it would be a piece out of someone's, sketchbook, kind of. Just like all these kind of mishmash of ideas. And, it lacks the kind of additional technique and technical acumen that would be applied to give it much greater depth, all the range of value for the color and hue and etc. But pieces like this are a good example of the purity of surrealism and what it's all about. And it's kind of this just raw, unedited, pure, just dropping of the mental synapses just right onto paper. And often in this particular piece specifically, you have sort of these avian features spread all over the place on the left side, the top right. And what I really think is cool is on the sort of the right side, you have sort of these valleys. So this sort of middle piece, this sort of middle structure, there's all these sort of menagerie of forms that kind of merge together. And you have this landscape on the right side and the left side. What's cool about, what I like on the right side, is the landscape. I sort of imagine all these sort of distant rows of just like these peaks of mountains. And it almost looks like the way that they're kind of all bulging like that, it's kind of like waves. And I almost want to think of it as like waves of audio. Right, kind of like the way that audio kind of rises in an audio program. It just kind of reminds me of that, which is really interesting. But overall, looking at a piece like this is, again, a really good example of kind of, again, what the purity of surrealism is like. Just this, I almost want to say mess. Not in a negative way, but literally it's just kind of messy and just everywhere. And there wasn't so much of a time you could think of where the artists even picked up their tool to stop. They just kind of kept going and going, and you can see sort of how they were trying to do things on the left, bottom left. There is some symmetry there, as they were going for this symmetrical, dual and quad symmetrical with those four eyes, and kind of this double face in the front, but especially that main sort of face that's head on is. There's a very unique expression there, and the one on the right, there's even different kind of profile type of expression. I like this a lot, and this is a really great example of again the purity of surrealism. Next, we have a piece by SyncMax titled "Gold Hypersaw," which this piece is very golden, and I like it. I like the use of the gold. Of course, it's a fairly common color. It has this, there's an essence to the gold color that is very unique to our sort of human condition. That's always been predicated throughout history as being something that people kind of lust over. So it is a very powerful, in-your-face color, and, the shininess of it and all the brightness is really great. But you can have these really nice darker, which goes to kind of brown, and this is used very well, the depth of all the layering within this character. Now this is, I really like this piece just because stuff like this, which I kind of do similar art like this, where you have kind of this face and it's sort of kind of contoured and structured and covered by this just intense mesh of different forms. You have kind of like it almost seems like it's an armor almost. You could kind of even And you take away some of the little design and overlay stuff, and just imagine that you're looking at this person's sort of head armor, right? And it's kind of going off in these angles to the two top corners. Those are kind of like these horns in a sense, almost. And you've got all these little pieces and meshes, and it's just very ornamental. That's, I think, a key word here, very ornamental. But it has this musical twist to it, which is kind of fun. Of course, all the obvious keyboards on the two sides. And there's some good symmetry, little added elements on top. The face is done very well. It's a fairly unique piece, and there's some blurring on a little bit on the top, and a little bit on the bottom too, which gives it, again, some kind of depth there without it necessarily having like foreshortening per se. And again, another great piece here that focuses on all these variations of forms and kind of just combining them in a very sensical way that is also very powerful and strong and just in your face, and the brightness of the gold just really hits you. I mean, if you had this as a piece on your wall, it would just brighten the room up. It would just be super loud, super intense. And again, kind of, I like to imagine the idea that if this was sort of like an ornamental kind of headpiece, just what that would kind of inflict in the sort of status symbol that it would have. For our third piece of the day, we have a piece by Bayard titled Alarielle, the Everqueen Bestiary. It's a very fantasy-focused piece. I almost kind of imagine this could be the art for like a Magic the Gathering card. Totally could. This is definitely like a legendary or some kind of rare creature, And a lot of action going on, a lot of movement, lots of different characters and creatures in here. There's a lot going on. It's a very intense battle scene, but also sort of a fairly poignant and focal point where you have this sort of giant beetle. I forget the type of beetle that this is, but using its giant horns to just kind of rush through and destroy part of this, what seems kind of like an undead army, which is pretty dope. And you can fairly tell because where its horn is ripping up, the soldiers seem like they're kind of these undead guys, and you've got this. It was really great for shortening because you have these characters that are far off and even more far off and fairly vertical, showing the height, absolute height in the background of these. Would seem kind of like gothic, kind of Dark Souls-y, giant city-like, structures in the background. And the lighting is very interesting. It's coming top down. It's a little overall, but there's definitely a lot of the key focus is on what I assume is Alarielle, with her wings. They're kind of being surrounded by these sort of ghost creatures that are going after her, or maybe she's kind of summoning in a sense. I love her spear, staff is really awesome, and the character design is really great, and she's in good movement. Everything is in movement here. There's almost nothing that's still, except for even the characters that are kind of being destroyed here. Good use of blur to show the movement and everything, but on the bottom you can tell, so going from bottom to top shows the range and the depth, because that skull that is just being pierced right through by a giant arrow, and that's a big fucking arrow, dude, is just going right through, and the great detail, geometric detail of the skull and the crack and everything is great, really showing. And you have these important points that have a lot of detail and different types of light. You have this overall green light and then blues going on here. It's a very, very good use of color, and I like you have. This is kind of an undead versus maybe nature type of battle, because on the left side you've got these real cool nature kind of esque, almost Trent kind of characters. Really liking that. A very original style and character style here too. Very, very great. I dig this one a lot, and definitely you should check out more of this guy's work. He's got some fantastic art. This is a fairly interesting piece. Very Max Ernst influenced. It's by Art of the Mystic, titled Bogomol's Landing. So there is a fair amount of sort of story kind of element here. So that kind of draws from the ancient Greek and Roman art, which of course was based off of the poetry and these sort of belief systems, philosophies they have there of all, Jupiter and all of those characters that are then represented in human form within these, various interesting scenes, which have, kind of expressing these sort of play and storytelling with it, which is a very unique kind of usage of art that you don't see a whole lot anymore, at least not too much, and definitely this is something that is expressed through some forms of surrealism. Not a whole lot, especially because surrealism is more focused on the unconscious element. I feel there is sort of a little bit of plot here, and I dig this character. Now, the whole sort of technical aspect, very well done. The background, the sky is very nice. You have, sort of a lake. You got the mountains on the right, and then that are fairly, kind of fairly far back. And the ones on the left that are coming is obviously the land that he's on, because it stretches around and wraps around to the front. And you have this interesting tree structure on the left that kind of blocks the remainder of that land as it wraps around. And certainly you can tell it's going off screen, so this character is in this unique world. And now I say it's Max Ernst similar because if you look at Max Ernst art, it is kind of flat, but with this mysterious kind of, you get that there's a range of depth, but it still seems kind of flat. But that's because there's so much intricacy and unique texture that's going on, and all these just exacerbated, almost frustrated forms that are interlocking and sort of touching and meshing with each other. You have a lot of that action going on, and it's very in your face, sort of movement without movement. And you have that, and then it kind of goes over. That's sort of what I'm seeing first on the left, and then going to the right. And this initial character in the front, I like a lot, especially this sort of, you have this symmetrical sort of kind of a halo. I'm going to sort of use that expressional term there. That's going around his head and everything, and you can see these eyes, and it's just a very interesting, you almost think it could be possibly an expression of their mental state, as it is going from the sort of conscious element that is ethereal, and is almost forming its own unique field, and this person is seems like they're in a meditative state, and as they're reaching higher levels of Zen, more these forms are kind of expressing outward, which is great. I love that a lot. And this piece, you can tell it feels very finished, and that they put a lot of effort and time and care into it. Dig this a lot, and this guy has great art. You definitely should check out more of it. Very similar stuff to Max Ernst, which is great. We need to see more of his stuff in this day and age. Well, if you know anything about me so far, I really like these particular pieces of art that utilize the female form. It's one of my favorite types of things, not necessary to look at, but also create and to use in space, and is a fairly common thing you see without art throughout history. And to go into this, we have a piece here by Anato Finn Stark titled Crown. And definitely, that is a heck of a crown that she's got going on there. Now, while it may seem kind of unreasonable because it's covering half of her face, there is these sort of eyes that you got going on, fairly subtle, and it's sort of on the left side, right side, and they're vertical. I love the use of vertical eyes, especially because it has this synonymous usage with the third eye, which is sort of an expression of the mind's eye, the DMT frontal lobe eye that we can see into an infinity. And it seems to me that she's feeling some distress from this. So possibly this kind of crown, and sort of, it's almost as if her sort of mind is kind of jutting out, It doesn't quite seem like it's something that you put on. It does seem like it's almost a part of her, and I kind of imagines kind of this coven of sort of nun-like characters that all are sort of nude, and sort of it's implied that she's nude because you can't see anything below the chest area. But let's just sort of take that for what it is, and that this sort of coven are all sort of utilizing. They have these sort of what may be initially sort of apparatus that it then molds to their character, and they're sort of in this kind of frustrated, painful state because it looks kind of painful. We get that pain emotion from all these sharp jutting edges and this sort of what almost looks like fire, at least, or an intention of this sort of burning. It looks like her skin is kind of ashen, and there's this fire resonance that's going on the left side. It's hard to tell where this is coming from, though, but it nonetheless is there. Maybe it's coming inside out, or is being applied somehow through this energy expression. The actual, absolutely great use of technical skill here. Really great display of just everything under the sun. I love the layering, all the little sort of drops and pieces that go along, almost like her skin. Again, it seems like she's kind of burning in a sense, so the skin is sort of mildly bubbling. It's not too much to be freaky or anything, or gory at all. But I love and enjoy the images that are being evoked by this piece here. Really dig it a lot, and you should check out more of this artist's work. I hope all of you enjoyed this episode. Please watch the next one. It should be coming out a day from now. I try to do this Monday through Friday as much as I possibly can. And if you have any sort of ideas, or if you want me to talk about a particular artist, a particular work of art, just send me a message. My Twitter info is below in the details, and hey, you can just leave a comment or whatever you'd like to do. All of it works the exact same. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it. Have a good one.